At this time, I'd like to introduce Isabel Schneider and Alex White, who are going to introduce our guest this morning.
And now, your WMUR meteorologist, Kevin Skarupa.
Thank you. You realize that applause is here because you had a delay this morning. I understand how this works. A huge thank you. We, as a station, a weather center, Channel 9, we don't get up here often enough. And I'm going to make sure, and I'm going to guarantee to everyone here listening, that it won't take me 9 years to get back here next time. We are very blessed in our storm center to have 4 different people. And, you know, hats off to Haley LaPointe, our new 4th meteorologist, for actually doing the noon show today to allow me to be able to be here today. My work hours are pretty awkward, pretty strange. It is not the glamour life of TV you probably imagine. We do not make millions and millions of dollars. We do not drive around in very expensive sports cars or live in huge mansions or make millions and millions of dollars. That's just not what we do. We don't do this to be famous or recognized wherever we go. I since 5th grade, have been a weather geek in every way, shape, and form, and it might as well just say that right on the name on the bottom of the screen under Kevin Skarupa. It is truly what I am more than anything else, and so a job in meteorology, whether it would have been flying in hurricanes or studying ocean currents or working for the National Weather Service, I would have been fine with any of that, even doing weather observations at an airport. I just love the weather part about what I do, and doing 100+ school visits a year, that's the best part, is I get to just talk about weather all day. Sometimes it's a little different, like this morning, last night, yesterday. But what we're going to talk about here today is the weather that you guys know. Basically the weather you have lived through, and what you remember, since you were knee-high to a grasshopper, has been the most active weather we've had in our known history. Now, I can look at numbers, actual numbers on a sheet of paper going back 140 years in Concord. And so we see a lot of different events. And as I'll show you today, we get a little of everything and a lot of certain things. And what I'm going to show you today is going to probably seem like I'm trying to scare you in a lot of ways. The weatherman would never do that, would he? That's what the newsroom is for. They're there to scare you all the time, not the weather guy. We're there as a scientist trying to figure everything out. So my job, since I graduated in college, 4 or 5-year program, Linden State College, which isn't, it's all that far from here, probably less than an hour from here in northeastern Vermont. Yeah, I look like one of the Beatles there on the left side, don't I? That was my first job in northern Iowa, and bounced around, northern Iowa 3 years, West Palm Beach, Florida for 3 years. I know what you're saying, why did you leave West Palm Beach, Florida? Partly sunny, high in 90 chance of storms, just didn't cut it for a weatherman after the first 3 years I was there. Nashville, Tennessee, and now back at Channel 9, my wife, born and raised in Merrimack, New Hampshire for the last 9 years. And so you can bounce around, or you can be in one place your entire career, and hopefully WMUR is where I retire someday. We get all 4 different seasons here. Every wind direction gives us something different, and you can't say that about every place in the country. Those wind directions are critical for us. Also critical, and you see it up here quite often, is the difference in terrain, the mountain areas, where certain things happen at certain elevations that don't happen at other elevations. Just in the small 5-town area that you guys come from to come to school here, it's radically different sometimes, by several inches of snow or ice. And there are 3 guides to our seasons. So if you're going to ask me today what the winter is going to be like, or shall I say the rest of the winter, that's going to hold the key. And yes, we do get everything here but volcanoes, and it was pointed out to me by a 2nd grader that we also, besides volcanoes, we also don't get tsunamis. Very smart 2nd grader. So here is this is your life over the last 7.5 years. 3 floods, an ice storm, 2 tornado outbreaks, 10 inches of snow in one season, Irene, Sandy, the October 29th snow, sorry about trick-or-treating 3 years ago, and the blizzard in 2013, $200 million in damage from weather events alone over the last 7.5 to 8 years. So again, if you were to just take a slice of any 8 years from 1870 to now, besides this, you're not going to see a laundry list like this. This is, unprecedented as far as just looking at the list and saying, wow, look at all of this damage. So let's go through a few. The Mother's Day flood, which even as you can see affected up here as well. It was over a foot of rain in 3.5 days. It was a low just sitting offshore, not moving, and producing all of that rainfall. Something very unique happened, and you can see this if you were to look at Google Maps. Something called, and if you learn anything today, here's the magic word, avulsion. And avulsion, see, I am a he, is when a river changes course. The Mother's Day floods, wow, that's high praise. There's probably about 200 adjectives that would describe me, and that's not one of them. The Suncook River rose so high that it found a lower place to go. If you look at Google Maps at any of the rivers, the Connecticut River, the Merrimack River, what you're going to notice is a couple of miles away from each of these rivers and where they are now are these little horseshoe shapes. They're called oxbows, little curves, lakes, look like horseshoes. That's essentially what the Suncook River was trying to do, is it found a straighter, lower place to go. So that's what's left of where the river was, and now there's a river going through a neighborhood that never thought they would have riverfront property. But it is a kind of a living, eating, breathing science experiment. Kind of like the tiger over there. I was trying to figure out a way to work that in. The third flood, besides the Alstead flood, which happened first, this was the third flood in 2.5 years, had more damage than the other two combined, even though it had the least amount of rain. And the reason was the other two had all weakened all the sand, the structure underneath bridges and roads. So by the time the third one came along, you didn't need that much. And so we had gone through, the first 3 events of this entire list were floods. And then it kept going. If you're a stats geek, you want to know, okay, you showed us a list, well, here's why. This is rain and melted snow. Average, going back to 1870, is 37.5 of rain and melted snow. First, second, third, fourth, 14th, and 24th all time in 6 consecutive years, going back 140 years. So it isn't our imagination. It's been very active. And after last night's rain for Concord, around 44 inches. So we're nearing the top 20 with 3 weeks to go. Oh, good. Yeah, we won't be holding a party for that. The ice storm in 2008. Half the state without power at one time or another. Now, what was amazing about this storm is most freezing rain events you need very light freezing rain so it can stick and slowly build up on trees and power lines. This was really heavy freezing rain. Kind of like the rain we were seeing yesterday, but it was for 2 days. And the numbers are pretty amazing. There was a other lesser amount of an ice storm 10 years earlier, but this had 4 times the outages and twice as much damage. 1,300 transformers, almost 800 power poles had to be repaired or replaced. So, for the preceding next year, every time we had a wind gust of 30 miles an hour, the weakened limbs that were still sitting up there would knock down a power line and power outages. I suspect that's kind of where we are at the moment after what happened during the Thanksgiving Day storm in southern New Hampshire. Much like this one. Yeah, this is the trick-or-treating storm. There I am on Friday. Storm happened Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. And there I am on Friday predicting 6 to 12 inches of snow for a good part of the state. This is why I was so nervous about that. I like to look at history. These were the snowiest Octobers we've ever had in 140 years. And there I am sitting there with a map with 6 to 12 inches of snow on it. And I'm saying to myself, what am I doing? Wound up, Concord got 22 out of that. Blows away any number on this. And that's what makes it the most incredible of all of these storms. I would like to think that you're going to go through the rest of your lives if you live here and never see another snow like that early in the year. I would like to think that, weather has a way of humbling me very quickly. We had a tornado in the state that was on the ground for 50 miles. 13 towns moving 45 miles an hour with winds over 120 miles an hour. The reason I think people are going to forget it, unfortunately, is the fact that there's no visual image of what it looked like. It was in the middle of the heavy rain of the thunderstorm that created it, so we didn't know it was a tornado until the next day, when the National Weather Service's John Jensenius right there went out and investigated the damage. He could tell the difference between a spiraling wind causing damage and twisted trees versus a microburst damage, which would have the trees all falling in all the same direction. Chances are this is what ours looked like. Right there. That was in Springfield, Massachusetts. On the right is a sky camera from Springfield. And that is the Connecticut River running right through downtown. So that's chances are what ours look like, but there's no visual image. So I think, unfortunately, even though it wound up being 50 miles, the longest track tornado in New England history, that we're probably going to forget it. You have to go back almost 200 years to find the last time we had a tornado that strong in New Hampshire. The number you should take away from this graphic is right here at the bottom of 1821, where that tornado injured hundreds. In New Hampshire in 1821. There weren't a lot of people here back then. So the fact that it injured hundreds says something. This was a storm that developed near Lebanon and finished just north of Concord. That one extremely visible, went over Lake Sunapee, went over Mount Kearsarge. Very powerful. These are not the kind of storms that you lose sleep over, and here's why. Yes, all powerful tornadoes